Perfect. Hope everyone's comfortable. We always ask people to take off their shoes like you would in your living room. So we want everyone to be comfortable. It's customary in Asian cultures to do so, just so we don't track any dirt into the temple, which is a clean place, of course. So starting off, my name is Ramesh Cheravu. I am a youth group leader here at Chinmay Mission DFW. I am also a Sunday school coordinator, and I'm also your host for tonight's event. So I'd like to start out with a joke. 3 atheists, an imam, a swami, a reverend, and a Baha'i faith leader walk into a bar. That's it. So we do have one panelist that is got caught behind an accident. So he's on his way. He'll be here in about 5-10 minutes. So we'll go ahead and start with the introductions. At this time, I'd like to invite our president of Chinmay Mission DFW, Mr. Ashok Dandekar, to the stage to give our welcome address.
Thank you, Ramesh. Hari Om, and welcome to Chinmay Mission for the interfaith debate. Special welcome to the speakers and the panelists, Reverend Patricia Generes, Ms. Jackie Oswald, Imam Dr. Zafar Anjum, Dr. Justin Fisher, Mr. Joshua Atkinson, Mr. Chakravarti is not here, and our own Swami Sarveshananda for joining us today. Also, a special welcome to the guests from different organizations who have come here for the first time. This is the culmination of a special year for us at Chinmay Mission. It is the birth centenary of our founder, Swami Chinmayananda. See his picture on this wall. He was born, Balkrishna Menon, in the southern state of Kerala in India in 1916. After obtaining degrees in literature, law, and journalism, he joined India's freedom movement. Later, he worked at National Herald, a reputed newspaper in India, as a reporter. While he was researching on an article to expose the Swamis or the monks from the Himalayas, he came to know one Swami Shivananda, founder of Divine Life Society, and he was very impressed by his social work. He ended up joining his institution and worked for him. He was initiated into sannyasa, or the Hindu monastic order, in 1949 and given the name Swami Chinmayananda. Chinmaya means full of knowledge, and the Ananda suffix in the end stands for bliss. Later, he did advanced studies under a well-known spiritual master, Swami Tapovanam. This picture is on this wall. Inspired by his newly gained knowledge of Hindu scriptures, Swamiji came down from the Himalayas to the plains to spread the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita and Upanishad and other ancient Indian scriptures to the masses. The main message was about divinity in each of us and how we can evolve ourselves to be better humans and work towards liberation from the cycle of birth and death. Swamiji traveled tirelessly the length and breadth of the globe, expounding the knowledge of Vedanta. He believed in the universal truth. He met with religious leaders of all faiths, spoke about and discussed with them the essential nature of man, mankind realize God. He pointed out that one should rise above religion and seek spirituality. He had followers from all religions. He wrote English commentaries on various Hindu scriptures. His most well-known discourses were on Bhagavad Gita. He would say that following the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, which are secular in nature, would make a Hindu a better Hindu, a Christian a better Christian, and a Muslim a better Muslim. He established an institution to train monks to spread this knowledge. His devotees founded Chinmay Mission in early 1950s. The motto of the vision of the Chinmay Mission is to provide to individuals from any background the wisdom of Vedanta and the practical means for spiritual growth and happiness, enabling them to become positive contributors to the society. And the motto of Chinmay Mission is to give maximum happiness to the maximum number for the maximum time. Now, Chinmaya Mission has mushroomed into a very large organization with 360 centers around the world, spreading the knowledge of Vedanta. It also runs several educational institutions and welfare projects. We are a chapter in the DFW Metroplex where more than 1,400 students attend Sunday school every weekend in multiple locations. All this we owe to Swami Chinmayananda and his vision. Swami Chinmayananda left his material body on August 3rd, 1993, and in San Diego, California. So with that, let me welcome all the speakers, the panelists, and the moderators, and all of you. And let's begin. Thank you.
All right, as mentioned, we have quite the esteemed panelists on representing both perspectives. I'd like to quickly go through and introduce our panelists. First of all, we have Imam Dr. Zafar Ali Anjum. He holds a master's and doctorate degree in Arabic literature from Aligarh Muslim University. He's a scholar in residence and imam at the Islamic Center of Frisco, Texas. He is also professor of Arabic and Islam in the School of Arts and Humanities at the University of Texas at Dallas. We also have Swami Sarveshanda, who studied Hindu philosophy at Sandipani Sadhanalaya in Mumbai in 1993. After completing the course, he served as a resident acharya at Chinmaya Mission Vijayawada until June 2002. Thereafter, he was appointed as a resident acharya of Chinmaya Mission in Dallas, Texas. Swamiji also serves as the national director of Chinmaya Yuva Kendra, which is the youth wing of Chinmaya Mission West. We also have Reverend Patricia Generous. She's ordained minister of religious science and a master of divinity. Reverend Generous is an assistant minister, director of small group ministry, the Sunday production coordinator, and administrator at the Center of Spiritual Living, or CSL Dallas. CSL Dallas is a member of the Centers of Spiritual Living, a global community comprised of 400 spiritual communities, teaching chapters, study groups, focus ministries, and other ministries in 30 countries, teaching a new thought philosophy through the study and practice of science of mind, also known as religious science. And lastly, we have Miss Jackie Oswald, who is our Baha'i Faith representative and part of the Richardson Interfaith Alliance. As a teenager, Ms. Oswald became a Baha'i. Since then, she's held various offices within the Baha'i faith. She's also served as a tutor and a facilitator with the Baha'i Ruhi curriculum for the past 20 years. If we can give a round of applause for the Theist panel. Representing the atheist perspective, to my left, we have Mr. Joshua Atkinson, who is a former international Christian missionary and ordained minister. He is currently a senior DevOps engineer in the automotive industry. In 2011, he became a free thinker or a member of the Church of Free Thought. The Church of Free Thought was founded in 1994 as perhaps the first explicitly non-theistic and non-supernaturalistic religious organization in the USA. Its aim has been to serve the psychosocial needs of atheists, agnostics, and other non-religious people in the DFW area, and to promote a rational and humanistic view of what have traditionally been religious issues and questions. Joshua helps the Church of Free Thought with marketing and their social media presence. We also have Dr. Justin Fisher. Dr. Fisher has earned his PhD in philosophy with a minor in cognitive science from the University of Arizona in 2006. Dr. Fisher was a postdoctoral research fellow at the Harvard University in 2007. He was also the assistant professor at the University of British Columbia from 2006 to 2008. Currently, he's the assistant professor of philosophy at Southern Methodist University. And lastly, our last panelist is Mr. Shaibal Chakrabarti. He's on his way. He'll be here in just a few minutes. Mr. Chakrabarti is an executive in the technology industry with over 20 years of global experience with Cisco and Nortel. At Cisco, Shaibal served as the CTO of Smart Cities and Alliances. At Nortel, Shaibal was selected for the leadership program with assignments in China, India, the Middle East, and North America. Shaibal currently serves as a thought leader in the cybersecurity industry as he pursues his PhD at the Darwin Deason Institute of Cybersecurity at Southern Methodist University. If we can give a round of applause to our panelists on that representing the atheist perspective. Wow, a lot of people just came in. This is awesome. There's a lot more people than we expected, but I know what everyone's thinking. We ordered plenty of food, so don't worry about that. Lastly, I'd like to introduce our moderators. So first of all, we have Neelima Gonuguntla, excuse me. Ms. Neel Gonuguntla serves as the president of the U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce, Dallas-Fort Worth, or the USICOC. The USICOC is comprised of over 3,000 individual and corporate members and is dedicated to supporting professional, business, and economic development throughout the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Prior to joining the chamber, Ms. Gonuguntla served as president of Ready to Work, an education and workforce development consultancy company. At Ready to Work, she supervised operations and business development, as well as administrative, regulatory, and legal and planning initiatives associated with the rapid growth of Ready to Work experience under her leadership. Gonuguntla received her education from Boston University and Baylor University, where she earned her bachelor's in political science and her JD MBA, respectively. She is licensed to practice law in the state of Texas and is a member of the State Bar of Texas, the Dallas Bar Association, as well as Dallas Young Lawyers Association. And our second moderator is Hansri LaForest. Hansri LaForest is a criminal defense and civil rights litigator. His practice handles state and federal criminal defense matters, as well as an assortment of civil rights matters, such as excessive force and Title IX matters. Hansri is very passionate about debate. As an undergrad at Fordham University, he was a member and vice president of the school's Parliamentary Debate Society. As a college debater in various competitions across the globe, including the Oxford Parliamentary Debate Union. After graduating law school in 2011 from Fordham University, Hansri began his legal career as a New York prosecutor in the Nassau County District Attorney's Office in 2011, prosecuting both misdemeanors and felonies. Hansri continues to support debate by volunteering to judge and instruct high school students with the Dallas Urban Debate Alliance. Please join me in welcoming our moderators tonight. Now, a few procedural points for tonight's discussion. In addition to being your host, I will also serve as your timekeeper. I won't go through my biography. I'll just tell you that I am qualified to be a timekeeper. Each panelist has been asked to prepare a 6-minute speech about their individual perspective on the topic, God, Heaven, and Hell, do they exist? Speakers from the theist side of the discussion will alternate with speeches from the atheist side of the discussion. Providing prompts at 3 minutes, 1 minute, and a half a minute, and we'll be calling time upon the conclusion of the 6-minute speech. After the initial speeches, our moderators will ask questions to our panelists to stimulate thoughtful discussion amongst our esteemed panelists. We will utilize the debate format. No winner or loser will be declared. Aww. This format has been chosen as a means to incite thoughtful discussion on the topic from various perspectives. Here at Shumai Mission, we realize the importance of having such interfaith faith discussions, and we are happy to be hosting such an esteemed group of panelists at tonight's event. At this time, I would like to invite our moderators to start round 1 of tonight's discussion. One more point, if I can ask everyone to please take out their cell phones and turn them off or put them on airplane mode, silence them, just to minimize any disturbances that we might create. Thank you. Also, restrooms, in case they are needed, are located towards the back hall where I'm pointing. There's a men's and women's restroom are both located on that side. And this, I have no doubt that this debate will be both intellectually stimulating and stimulating to the appetite. So I hope everyone brought their appetites, because we have catered food and that'll be served afterwards. So everyone please plan on staying afterwards for dinner as well. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. So as Ramesh mentioned, the format is that each of our panelists will have 6 minutes to deliver a pre-prepared speech. And then following the 6 minutes, we will open it up to questions that we as the moderators will pose. If you all have questions for each other that may come up during the debate, please indicate that you have questions when that time opens, and we will certainly acknowledge and open that up to you. So with that, Reverend Generous, if you could start us off this evening.
Thank you, my beautiful Anu, my gracious host, my beautiful and interesting panelist. I am honored and delighted to greet you in this moment. As this appears to be the season of debates, Cruz and Trump, Bernie and Hillary, I vow to take the high watch, to be civil, gracious, and most of all, polite. After all, my team has angels on their side. Thank you. Together we will address, consider, and share our individual and collective faith-based perspectives on such a heavy topic: God, heaven, hell. And I have all of 6 minutes to do it in. So I had simply better cut to the chase. Science of mind is a synthesis of the laws of science, the opinions of philosophy, and the revelations of religious tradition. Our dear Ernest Holmes, our founder of the Centers for Spiritual Living, has echoed Plotinus that the many levels, and I'm echoing, okay, that the many avenues of learning that we have is science, philosophy. Science of mind is a way of life, a way of being that works. My center, CSL Dallas, our mission is to be radically inclusive, spiritually progressive, and transform lives. We do not consider that there is an anthropomorphic deity seated on a fluffy cloud, checking off who is good and not so good. We do not believe that the deity is an isolated fact in the universe, a separate entity, or an apartness of the sum total of all things. We consider the whole universal system to be one that is unity, undivided and undivisible. God, the absolute reality of all there is. God is right where you are. God exists. The Centers for Spiritual Living belief system could be considered by some as panpsychism. Therefore, I believe that God is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. I believe there is nothing, in fact, but God. There is nothing else. I believe that each of us is an incarnation of a divinity against which presses an insistent urge to live life, to love life, to experience life. There is a divine urge within everyone to know more, to be more, to express more. And I have found the thing that I was searching for was what I was searching with: God. Dr. Quincy expressed it this way: if both mind and matter are real and are not separate substances, and neither can emerge or evolve from the other, that matter and mind have always existed together and are co-existent, co-eternal. And it goes to the very heart of everything that is life, all the way down. God embraces a minimalist creed, leaving the individual free to choose. We are considered a Christian denomination, but with a decidedly American flair. We practice the New Thought philosophy with the hint of transactional. Thank you, 1 minute. Transcendentalism. Science of mind to me is to know that I dwell within the God self, the spirit of all that is good. Does hell exist or heaven exist? I believe it is a state of mind, as anyone can tell you who has been on the North Dallas Tollway. As I think, so am I. I can be standing in the most glorious rose garden and be angry at my daughter and not see a single petal. I believe that God is all there is, that I am that I am, whole, perfect, and complete. Thank you.
And now, Mr. Joshua Atheists to deliver the second speech of this round, to receive 6 minutes.
I'd like to first of all, thank you for having us. Congratulations in the 100 years since Swami Chinmayananda, his birth year. Also, thank you for hosting us, and thank you for the panelists for giving up your time. And I've prepared 3 pages of things that will not fit into 6 minutes. So I will speak very fast, and I don't expect you to get any of it. No. So I want to start with the fact that I'm here to defend the position that it's reasonable to believe that a God or gods likely doesn't exist. That's rather extreme for some. So I will define atheism in a couple of different ways. First of all, with the official definition of atheism or non-theism, is that most people have a preconceived idea or notion what an atheist is and isn't. There's lots of extra beliefs. Merriam-Webster defines atheism as ungodliness or wickedness, although it does list that definition as archaic. But secondarily, a disbelief in the existence of deity or the doctrine that there is no deity. So a doctrine that there is no deity. Atheism comes from the Greek words a, meaning without, and theos, meaning God. Very simply, atheism, translated, means without God. However, the nonprofit organization American Atheists says of atheists, the only common thread that ties all atheists together is a lack of belief in gods and supernatural beings. As most atheists can attest, trying to get atheists to get together is like trying to herd cats. Now we have a basic understanding of atheism. I'm sure that the other opposition panelists will have or will define the word God. What is God? Because that's what we're here to discuss. It's a very wide definition. There's 4,200 recognized religions in the world, and that's an estimate. That doesn't include personally held beliefs such as nature, or the definition or nature of God. Merriam-Webster says that God is a supreme or ultimate reality as the being perfect in power, wisdom, and goodness who is worshipped as creator and ruler of the universe. A being or object believed to have more than natural attributes and powers that require human worship, specifically one controlling a particular aspect or part of reality. The 5 most basic commonalities between most religions in the idea or concept of a God is that they must be all-knowing. Reverend Generous spoke and said that her God is omniscient, knowing everything. Eternal, meaning they exist outside of time, omnipresent, if you will. Effective, meaning they have the ability to influence or cause changes in the physical world. All-loving, meaning that they are the fountainhead of humanity and therefore care and loves each of us. And a creator, is creating or will create all things that previously existed, currently exist, or will ever exist. As far as all-knowing, to make it simple, if God knows everything, then it cannot forget the moment it forgets. If it does forget, it doesn't know everything. However, if God cannot forget, then it does not know how to recollect. If God can recollect or remember, then there is something that it doesn't know. It doesn't know how it feels to remember. God cannot be eternal because God exists outside of time, not in time, but timeless. What would that mean about a God's nature? God would never lose the past or anticipate the future. A God would not need to know the future because to a timeless God, there would be no future or past. Everything would be ever present in one timeless moment. Why would God ever need to relate to humanity? Each of these points really comes down to one: love. God is love, and that's what it's been equated as in most religions. He's a creator, or she's a creator or destroyer. At the end of the day, we believe that there is no God. There is nothing higher than us. We have humanity. There's a lot of add-ons, a lot of bonuses that you will get with atheists. There are atheists who believe in conspiracy theories. There are atheists that believe that the government is out to kill us. Those are atheists. And an atheist is simply a person who acknowledges that even though we can't know, there's almost certainly no God. I don't need the rest of my time. And I do have the other points if you guys would like to hear them. I timed it. It was about 10 minutes. But if you would like to read it afterwards, you're welcome to come up to me. And again, thank you all for having me here. I'm the least qualified, but the most interested.
At this time, we'd like to ask Ms. Oswald to come and address the congregation.
I almost forgot my glasses. We have no clergy within the Baha'i faith, and so anyone that talks to you is talking from a lay perspective and the knowledge that they have gained through their own study. Baha'u'llah is the founder of the Baha'i faith, and he was born in Iran, which was known as Persia. He lived between 1817 and died in 1892. He brought the teachings of God for this age. God in the Baha'i view is a supreme unknowable essence, the creator, the sustainer, and many other attributes which we can only know about as far as he is concerned. Tonight we're talking about spiritual matters, and this has to do with the world of the spirit, which within the Baha'i teachings are considered to be 5 different levels. They all have aspects and they all have limitations. There's the vegetable spirit, which is a combination and cohesion of elements. And within this spirit is the power of growth. We have here the various plant life that we have, that we are all aware of. Then the animal spirit, which has aspects of the vegetable spirit. Plus it has the senses, sight, hearing, smell, touch. The human spirit is the next level, and it also has aspects of the lower level, but it has the power of reason level. There are 2 aspects of this human spirit. One is the divine, which we know through the virtues. The other is a satanic aspect of the vices. Then there is the spirit of faith, the heavenly spirit. Pardon me, my mouth is so rough. And this is that part of man, which is the soul, which is most related to God. And this is the part of us which acknowledges the higher being. The last level is the Holy Spirit, which is the mediator between God and his creation. So these are the divine teachers, the manifestations, the prophets, from Abraham, Moses, Buddha, Krishna, Jesus, Muhammad, and now the Bab and Baha'u'llah. The lower spirit cannot know or comprehend those that are above it. It's only through our own imagination that we can perceive a level higher than our own. What is the relationship between God, the manifestation, and man? If we were to think of it in physical terms, God would be like the sun, which is all-powerful, a source of light, a source of heat. Do we know the reality of the sun? No, we do not know the reality of the sun. We only know its attributes. The manifestation is like a mirror, pure and polished, that reflects things. It reflects objects. It reflects the sun. It reflects the light to man. Man knows of God through looking at the mirror, through seeing the reflection of the sun, through seeing the reflection of light. And this is how man becomes aware of God. We know the divine teachers in human form so we can understand and learn of God's teachings through our faculty of reason. The kingdom of God is referred to as heaven. It's an expression, not a factual statement. It is sanctified from time and space. The spirit has no place. It is a placeless reality. Those souls who are veiled from God in this world and the next world to come are non-existent and forgotten in relation to the divine kingdom. Heaven is not a literal place, but is a connection with the Word of God. Spiritual birth delivers man from the animal nature to a spiritual nature. Hell is not a literal place. It is being a process of being veiled from God, being subject to the world of nature. Our non-comprehension of a life hereafter is no proof of its non-existence. There's a quote from the Baha'i writings that says, "Where is heaven and where is hell? The one is reunion with me, the other, thine own self." Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank Mrs. Oswald for her remarks, and I now call upon Mr. Chakravarti to deliver a speech not to exceed 6 minutes in length.
Good evening. Distinguished panelists, brothers and sisters. It's so much easier to define God, heaven, and hell using a religion. Faith, or lack thereof, is a fundamental personal choice. Society categorizes us constantly: adult, male, Caucasian, white collar, 1%, and atheist. What is atheist? My friend Joshua did a definition. Oxford Dictionary defines as a person who disbelieves or lacks belief in the existence of God or gods. It implies a deficit. It's a bad connotation. Are we atheists? A scientist cannot be an atheist. We cannot prove the existence of God, neither can we disprove his absence. The absence is not provable. Richard Dawkins is a proponent of this theory in The God Delusion. And there were many scientists, however, who were very strong in their faith, but at the same time, it was not against their science. Darwin, Ramanujan, as well as Einstein. If we slightly change the definition of God or the Supreme Being, in the late 80s, I used to play ping pong with a celebrated author by the name of Dr. Atheists Theists. He was very accessible in this small country and small town. And he had a very famous quote that said, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." And the corollary of that was any advanced civilization would be indistinguishable from a supreme being or God. And if you look at the Greek and Indian mythologies of their gods and their descriptions, you might find some similarities of advanced civilizations. I have some life experiences in faith-based conflicts and ethnic conflicts. I've been exposed to riots, Hindu-Muslim riots, many of you have too, Hindu-Sikh riots in 1984, as well as terrible Buddhist Hindu riots in Sri Lanka. These are very gruesome. You don't want to go through them ever again. They leave an imprint on your mind. You will not forget them, as well as you don't want your children to go through them. However, they continue in the world today. They continue around the globe, a conflict of faith and ideologies. Faith, of course, provides a moral compass in a volatile planet. We don't teach our kids moral science anymore. We teach them to be Darwinian. And we teach them to be Darwinian so that they can be successful. In my travels, I have seen faith drives amazing beauty and utter destruction. I have visited some of the holiest sites on the planet. The Al-Aqsa Mosque. I have been at the Al-Azhar University in Cairo. I have been in Bodh Gaya, I have been in Pushkar, I have been in Mathura, and I have been in Jerusalem, in the tomb of Jesus Christ. However, when these faiths bring people together, they also have terrible conflicts. If you know about Myanmar and Sri Lanka, there is Buddhist backlash against Rohingyas and Tamils. In the end, after going through these life experiences, God, heaven, and hell do not exist. It is a myth. Nature, chaos, physics, and cosmic forces, cosmic status. It is incomprehensible that ancient texts, 750 to 4,000 years old, can answer the question as to why we are here and what is our meaning of life. It is improbable and highly unlikely that a merciful and all-present supreme being can be granular to all living beings. We are driven by the laws of nature. We have evolved over billions of years as living things. We are recyclable organisms. We are born, we reproduce, we die. And our offsprings do the same. As intelligent species, we are capable of complex thought, contemplation, and reasoning to describe our environment. We haven't proved the existence of heaven or hell, just the 9 planets. And it's highly unlikely that the Supreme Being resides in this one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chakraborty. At this time, I'd like to call Imam Dr. Zafar Anjum to the podium, please.
Good evening, everybody. I would like to start with the Islamic greetings because we also learn at the same time some culture. And the Islamic greeting is Assalamu alaikum. See, here are so many who know the response for that. It's a greeting of peace. And Ramesh, if you don't mind, I would like to take some time out. 1 minute. Because I would like to express my feelings to be here this evening in this place with all of you. Because originally I'm from India and I see so many our countrymen, our Indians over here. So I would like to be, celebrate my presence over here, and I'm feeling like back home. So thank you very much. And Ramesh especially was constantly reminding us about the food, the Indian food. I can smell the aroma of that Indian food. From the Islamic perspective, God is always in the life of a faithful person, 24/7. And there is no doubt about that at all, that God exists, definitely exists. And the life of all the faithful people revolve around the existence of God and his all bounties and generosity and everything. The holy scripture of Islam is Quran, and God reveals about himself in the Quran. There are 2,500 times mentioning about God in the holy scripture of Quran, where he describes himself, introduces himself. So he is at one point, he is transcendent, but at the same time he is omnipresent, and he is always connected with humanity, with his creatures, and he has this friendship, the relationship of love with all his creatures, and he acts in the history as well. And his generosity is not limited to only those people who believe in him, but he declares that he does not have any discrimination against those people who even do not believe in him. And it reminded me of a beautiful story and a prayer of a prophet who we all Christians, Jews, Muslims, and many other faith, those are known as the Abrahamic faith, they found Prophet Abraham as the father of all these religions. So according to the Islamic narrations, when Prophet Abraham, he built the house of God in Mecca, at that time he made a prayer. And he said that, "Oh God, bring all your blessings in this town and the people who will visit this town and the house of God, but give your provisions to those only who believe in you." But God right away answered him and corrected him. And he said, "Oh Abraham, even I will be more generous to those people who do not believe in me, especially in this world." So that was the generosity and the blessings of God, that all the Muslims, they believe in that. Then the concept of God in Islam is that he is God of mercy, he is a God of compassion, he is a God of love and affection. And if you start reading the Holy Scripture of Quran, there are 114 chapters, and each and every chapter of Quran begins with the same statement, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. That means in the name of God, the most kind, the most merciful. So every Muslim, 1.6 billion people around the globe, they reiterate and recommit themselves to the same notion about the mercy of God, that I begin everything in the name of God, who is most kind and most merciful. And his generosity, his mercy, as I said earlier, permeates not only to those who believe in him, but it is infinite, and it covers each and every. So that is about the mercy and the rahmah, that is known as the rahmah of God. God's mercy is not only to the human beings or the animals or the creatures, but we can also see that sign of God as a mercy in the activities of nature. So one point of in the verses of the Quran, God speaks about that whenever you see these clouds, whenever you see the winds, they are bringing the rain to the farming land and the producing the harvest and the fruits. It's all activities of the nature is because of the sign of mercy from God. And also he declared the biggest mercy of God is his own Prophet of Islam, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and all the messengers and the prophets and all these saints and all these Sufis. When he was our president of the society, he was mentioning about the Swamiji. So I was recalling all the Sufi saints also in India, like Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti Ajmeri and all that. So they are all the biggest signs of the mercy of God. Now I would like to conclude with the heaven and hell. There are three realms of the Quranic universe. One is earth, that we are all living in that, and the second one is heaven, and the third one is hell. God has created the human beings, and according to the Islamic belief, he put our first parents, Adam and Eve, in the heaven. And then he sent them down to this earth for his plan, and then he has given two kind of forces. One are angelic forces, the good forces, and the second are evil forces. They are animalistic forces. So now this is our temptation, this is our test and trial, that which force we are going to develop while we are here in this world. If we are boosting our spirituality, we are going and increasing our, and then our end will be in the final abode, our final destination, the same place where Adam and Eve lived before, that is the heaven. And if some people are doing otherwise, with hostility, cruelty, and all that, then their end will be the hell. God save me and to everyone of that. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank Imam Dr. Anjum for his remarks, and I now call upon Dr. Justin Fisher to deliver the sixth speech of the round, not to exceed 6 minutes in length.
Thank you for having me here, and thanks everyone for your time. So I was invited here to talk about why I don't believe in any gods in heaven or in hell. When I say I don't believe in any gods, what I mean is that I don't believe that there's any being so powerful, so knowledgeable, and so benevolently inclined towards us that it would be worthy of our worship. Some religions have claimed that their gods are all powerful, all knowing, and all loving. I agree that such a being would deserve to be called a god, but I'm also willing to use the label for beings that are somewhat weaker, somewhat less well-informed, or somewhat less morally engaged. I can imagine all sorts of possible gods, but I don't think any of them exist. I think for most people, disbelief in gods is the natural default position. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that nobody here believes in Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god of the Aztecs. I was a bit worried in an interfaith thing like this that there might be somebody here. So we're all on the same page about Quetzalcoatl. Notice we didn't need any sort of fancy argument to convince us that Quetzalcoatl probably doesn't exist. We all know that primitive people make up stories to explain things they don't understand. They build religions around these stories. We all know such religions can survive for long periods of time, regardless of whether the claims they make are true. We all recognize that the mere fact that millions of people believed in Quetzalcoatl is not sufficient reason for us to believe it too. Maybe someday we'll get good evidence that Quetzalcoatl exists. Maybe someday a feathered serpent will fly down and show us home videos of the time that he spent hanging with the Aztecs. But until we get evidence like this, it's perfectly rational for us all not to believe in Quetzalcoatl. As far as I can tell, none of the other gods that people have imagined have any better evidence going for them than Quetzalcoatl has. Just as it's perfectly natural and perfectly rational for us all to disbelieve in Quetzalcoatl, I think it's also perfectly natural and perfectly rational to disbelieve in all the other gods that you could imagine too, at least until we find strong evidence that some such god does exist. And this evidence can't just be ancient texts or oral traditions, because we all know that all the other religions have those too, and it's clear that they can't all be right because they contradict each other. I myself haven't seen any sort of evidence that would convince me that any religion is correct, much less that would help me to decide between them when they make conflicting claims. This lack of evidence is a big part of why I don't believe in any gods, just like most of you don't believe in most imaginable gods either. Furthermore, when I look at the evidence we do have, the universe looks to me just like you would expect a godless universe to look, and not at all like you would expect the universe to look if one or more gods existed. When I look out, I see a universe that is very large and very old. The vast majority of the universe, for the vast majority of its history, was completely inhospitable to human life. When I look at the evidence from astronomy, I see a universe littered with the remnants of 13 billion years of blind trial and error processes that produce billions and billions of stars, eventually including a few nice little solar systems like ours with planets capable of supporting life. When I look at the evidence from biology, I see that our planet is littered with the remnants of 4 billion years of blind trial and error processes that only just brief moments ago on these timescales eventually evolved a species that was capable of asking the questions we're asking tonight. This looks exactly like what I would expect the universe to look like if we arose from blind trial and error natural processes, and not at all like what I would expect it to look like if things had been set up by an intelligent God with any sort of special interest in humans. So for me, this evidence weighs against believing in any gods. Things don't get any better when I look at our tiny little corner of the universe. Yes, our planet is habitable. Well, 20% or so of its surface is anyway. This is much better than we could say for pretty much every place else in the universe we found. But is there so nice that the only way we have to explain it is that we have a powerful, loving God watching out for us? My favorite description of life on Earth comes from Woody Allen. Life is full of loneliness and misery and suffering and unhappiness, and it's all over much too quickly. When I look around the world, I see way more suffering than I would expect if there were a powerful, knowing, loving God watching out for us. Many of us may be doing all right now. You kind of needed to be if you wanted to come to this thing. But just wait until you get old and your body and mind start to deteriorate as cancer starts to devour your body. Just think about the fact that fully half of the world's population lives on less than $2 a day. Think about the amount of suffering that easily befalls people in these sorts of circumstances. Any God worth worshiping would have the power, knowledge, and motivation to prevent this suffering. The fact that billions of people are left to suffer in these ways is very strong evidence that there is no God, at least not any God that I would want to worship. In closing, I want to link this back to the other two parts of our debate topic, heaven and hell. I think that if a God did exist, then he, she, or it, let's stick with the traditional he would use his great power, knowledge, and benevolence to produce heavenly circumstances for the beings he loves. He wouldn't leave the promise of heaven dangling perpetually out of sight to motivate us to do what he wants. Instead, he'd be a rousing motivational speaker and could use his omnipotence to bring out the best in us without needing to appeal to crass enticements and threats. The fact that earth is far from heavenly is evidence that no God exists. And of course, I don't see any independent reason for us to believe in heaven. In my eyes, the case for hell is even worse. I guess it could be that we have a powerful invisible friend looking out for us who loves us so much that he set up a hell to torture us for all eternity. But frankly, that story sounds flat out implausible to me. Any being who would be capable of torturing us for all eternity is not a God that we should align ourselves with or worship. If you think a hell exists, then I think you shouldn't believe in any powerful benevolent gods. And if you believe in powerful benevolent gods, you shouldn't believe in hell. Better yet, I don't think you should believe in either of these things, at least not until we get much better evidence than we've seen yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fisher. Swami Sarveshananda.
Good evening to the esteemed panelists here, and welcome to one and all, those who have come here for the first time and those who have been coming here for a while. It's a tradition in our Hindu way that the host always goes last. So according to that tradition, I just requested that, I be going last. And also, to our credit, we have the tag that we are the oldest religion, one of the oldest religions. So according to that as well, the elderliness of being there for a while and only be befitting. So thank you all for taking time and being here. In Hinduism, if it were just a definition of God as someone sitting up there in the heavens and managing or manipulating with our little lives here, probably I would have been, or I was for quite some time on that side as well. And that is when the amazing introduction into Hinduism through Puja Swami Chinmayananji got me to where I am today. My point blank questions to him was, is God there? How do I believe? And his definition was, God can be defined at different levels for each individual to understand. But to start with, in the Hindu way of thinking, there is the word astika and nastika, which roughly translates to theist and atheist, but it has a totally different definition altogether for astika and nastika, because within the Hindu scripts, we have those who firmly believe in the material sciences, in the atoms and in the subatomic particles. They have also been included as a part and parcel of Hindu way of thinking. Because the definition, which is what got hooked me, was astika or nastika is a belief system. As this side of the panel believes in some supreme force, they believe not in such supreme force. But we can come to a common ground that we do have a belief, and that belief is in one's own self. And how we end up defining that self can be different. Our scriptures say, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. There is one truth, and that truth can be called or recognized in different ways. We call it in Hindi water, in different languages, we call it differently. But the element that is being called for is the same. And looking at it from different perspectives, each one can have a different interpretation of it. But that belief in one's own self, as that self being defined as conscious, existential, and bliss. So there are 4 questions that I would entertain at this point. If you feel compelled, don't answer, but if you can, it would be appreciated. Do you exist? Do you know that you exist? Do you have to ask somebody next to you, hey, do I exist? That person must be a little cuckoo up there. I exist, and I know that I exist. And I want to exist as or with happiness. And we all eternally put effort in trying to be happy. And being or reaching to that state of happiness is eternal seeking of the entire humanity. In seeking this happiness, when we start dividing, comparing, competing, we in Hinduism do not believe like the Abrahamic religions of good and bad, good being godly and bad being satanic. But we believe that the goodness and badness is within each individual and the individual's perspective. Thereby, our every experience as we go through, in one way of defining, we have the choice of making it heaven or heavenly, or we have a choice of making it hell-like. It is my personal choice of how I go through life to make it heavenly or hell-like. Recently, when somebody saw the posting on my Facebook saying that this was the topic, here's my old friend, another Swami, he just sent me a one-liner. He said, hey, what about if you reach that God? And he says, how was heaven? Here is where we have the choice of how we can make our present moment hell-like or heaven-like. Because that goodness and badness is not universal. It is something that we, based on our set of likes and dislikes, create it around us. So it is right here, around us, within us. And that realizing is the very purpose of God, or purpose of life, to realize that I am that God. And to realize that I am that God, which is extending throughout, connecting with everybody, that realization is what we call as God. Thank you for this opportunity. I think I'm done. Hari.
Thank you for the remarks. So at this time, we have concluded the first part of the debate, which is the pre-prepared speeches, and we will open it up to questions from the moderators as well as questions from one side of the panel to the other side of the panel. So we will start off with a few questions from the moderators and then open it up to you on the stage. So this question goes to the theists. Religious affiliations in the United States have been dwindling and have dwindled to its lowest point since the 1930s. More people in this country are choosing not to affiliate with a religious organization or a church. Why do you believe this is the case? And the alternative question to that is, what benefits do you believe affiliating with a religious train of thought or an organization brings to the individual? And I'll open it up to the entire panel.
Well, I would say, first of It may be the fact that the cultural creatives, one would say that they are highly educated, they're mobile, they are, they have good jobs, and they really want for very little. And some are finding religiosity or the doctrination of religion restraining, whereas they find spirituality and of loving one another as a way of life, a way of being more attractive. So I think it would be, we are in a mobile society that moves around. Families are not bringing their children to the Sunday schools. And as I hear, this beautiful center has about 1,400 students that come 2 days a week. Well, obviously the parents were kind enough and loved their children enough to bring them to experience this beautiful way of life. So I would say that the family traditions and the mobile society are a part of it.
We look at history in cycles that are dependent upon the guidance of God as given through the various manifestations or divine teachers. So that when the founder of the great religions come, they bring these spiritual teachings that come to them through them from God. And that there is a rise in the civilization that they found. And then slowly humanity adds their own ideas. And they drift a little bit away from the pure teachings that were given to the founder of their faith. And then they drift further away until you can hardly understand what is the pure teachings. Right now, we are at a stage where there is so much materialism in the world that it is very difficult to maintain a spiritual life and to maintain a loving relationship with those who are not loving in return. I think that this is the stage where we are now, at what we as Baha'is would think of as the beginning of a new civilization.
I will start with the quote from Tolstoy. He was a very well-known novelist and a philosopher. So he said that I was looking for the meaning of life. What is the purpose of my creation? What is the meaning of my life? And I asked this question to the science first. And when I came to the point about the reality of the life, science did not give me a satisfactory answer. Faith. And faith has provided me this answer. So the reason that we are building all these religious facilities and we provide all these services over here, and we have to attach ourselves with these so that we can find the meaning of life, that why God has created us, what is the purpose of the life, and how can we be the better human beings. It is also in Islamic tradition, a best practicing Muslim, he is also the best citizen of any country, best citizen of any place. So it also helps us to shape our personality, our characters and all that. So that's why I think we need to affiliate ourselves with all these religious organizations.
If I understand the question right, why are we dwindling? Why are different faiths dwindling? If I look at it from a very broad perspective, I think we as humanity, a couple of generations ago, may have been pulled together to say that, hey, look, you like each other, you don't need to love each other, tolerate each other. You don't get onto each other's nerves, tolerate each other. And we still talk after these many generations of getting to know each other, that we know now that we have 7 continents and there are some inhabitable ones, there are uninhabitable ones, and we have been transmigrating all over the place, and we still talk the talk of tolerating each other. I think we should transcend that. And we should come to a platform of accepting each other for who they are, for what they are, rather than trying to change the other for my perspective or to change my perspective for pleasing someone else. To accept would be to build a bridge, and then on that bridge we can build a connector of love. And without that acceptance, we keep tolerating. It has a breaking point, and when that breaking point happens, we don't need a hell out somewhere. We just create that hell-like situation here. And I couldn't agree more when Chakrabarti ji said that we as, on a religious basis, we have killed more in humanity than any other cause. So that which cannot unite us as humanity together cannot be called as a religion. That which can unite us can be called as a religion, and that which can unite us can be called as godly principle. That which divides us, and that perspective to respect each other and to accept each other is the starting point. Lack of it is where we start dwindling.
Thank you for those perspectives. One of the recurring themes that came up in many of your sites was the concept of love. And also in many of the pre-prepared speeches, you also mentioned love and compassion. So to follow up on that, and this question is for the atheists, you also mentioned love as a concept that you believe in, potentially believe in. What do you attribute the source of that love to as an atheist? The source of the concept of love.
There we go. At least in my prepared comments, I had mentioned the idea that God would be loving, and since I don't think God exists, I don't think his love came from anywhere. He doesn't exist. If the question is, where did the human capacity for loving come from? There's work in evolutionary psychology looking at ways in which having various positive emotions towards people around us help us to survive, have more offspring and stuff like that. And I could probably churn out the sort of going stories on that stuff if you wanted, but I'm not sure the details really matter. But the idea is that this is a capacity that we would have evolved because it serves useful purposes for survival and reproduction.
Mr. Chakrabarti or Mr. Atkinson, do you have any thoughts on that?
I would say that I essentially concur. Scientific studies have shown that the chemical processes that take place that surround love inside of the human body all support the idea of procreation. And while I think we can, that covers romantic love. If you look at sort of humanitarian love, love we have for one another, I would say that it's almost self-preservation. We care about others, and we choose not to do violence to others because we also choose to have people care about us and not hurt us in the same ways that we would choose not to hurt them. So it's sort of a cooperation of the species, if you will.
I have a similar take. I had said that faith drives amazing beauty and also utter destruction. Love and compassion is one part of that, and destruction is another part of that. It's just a statistical outcome.
Thank you.
My question is specifically for Mr. Chakrabarti, but I do want the other panelists on the atheist side to answer this question, because Mr. Chakrabarti, you mentioned the concept of Darwinism. And I think this goes to the point that Dr. Fisher was making and Mr. Atkinson was making. And that's the question of, is good and evil completely subjective under atheism? Many religions believe in good and evil being objective and discrete concepts, such as heaven or hell. It follows that in many religions, giving food to someone who's hungry is objectively good. And turning around and murdering that person when that person did nothing wrong would be objectively evil. If someone doesn't believe in God or doesn't believe in religion, and if someone instead believes that our existence is governed by luck, or evolutionism, or Darwinism, or any nomenclature you want to add to that, does that mean that there is no objective good or evil? In other words, would giving someone food have the same moral value as murdering someone?
That's a difficult one, but I'll attempt to answer it. It's a very, very good question. Running society using Darwinism is not something that we are saying. We don't want to base society on Darwinism. It's very difficult and a very awful way to run a society. So Darwinism helps in understanding how we got here. It necessarily, it just tells us how we got here, but it doesn't tell us how we should run our society.
This is a question that atheists will disagree about. There are some atheists who would go in the direction that you seem to be pushing and say, yeah, morality is just something that people make up as they go, and there's nothing deeper to it than that. There are lots of other atheists, and I'm one of them, who are moral realists who think that there is objective reality. And I think it's worth noting that being a theist doesn't really help here. You know, if I read the Bible, I still need to go through it and figure out which of the things that the Bible says I ought to do are things that I really ought to do, and which of them are outdated. You know, it says I should stone gay people, but I don't think I should stone gay people. And so just going to some theistic source to try to answer these questions isn't going to be the ultimate answer to these questions. A lot of the theistic sources get a lot of these issues flat wrong. It is a really tough question. Where does objective morality come from? But I think God's not the right answer to that question. And I have colleagues in metaethics who could talk your ear off about the different theories about where objective morality comes from. And I'm happy to talk with folks about it later, but it gets us into lots of questions. But I'll just say that sort of for people who work in foundations of ethics is to say that no, the thought that ethics is founded in religion is mistaken, that if there is some sort of foundation for ethics, it's something other than religion.
And I would say that I do agree with Dr. Fisher about that, in that maybe I didn't present myself clear enough in the essence that atheism as a whole is just the not believing in a God or gods. So there will be multiple ands in there. Like you will have some atheists who believe in a sense of karma or reincarnation or whatever. But I sort of intimated in my last answer, we don't murder because we would not also want to be murdered. And we give food to the hungry because if we were hungry, we would hope for food. And that would be the human thing to do.
So, Mr. Atkinson, you mentioned that self-preservation is really a concept that's sort of prevalent, and that God or religion is not necessarily the best answer for self-preservation. Is that a fair?
Partially.
Partially? Okay, so let's go with that for just a second.
Sure.
So, in our modern society, we have criminalized certain activities because we see them as going against humanity or going against self-preservation or the preservation of our society. Yet, when we look at statistics suggest that criminal activity is lower where people adhere to a religious, moral, or social code, maybe out of fear of, divine retro, but suggests that those who adhere, or societies that adhere to a religious or moral code may have a higher chance of survival or self-preservation. So can you speak to that a little bit? And if anybody else wants to jump in, please do.
Sure, I think I can. I would say that statistic is relative. And that's why I said partially, is because that is the main way that we as humans have chosen to group ourselves as it relates to morals and ethics and the things that comprise humanity. We've currently chosen religion. Previously, yes, I think it would be because of the community that you have as individuals or tribes or whatever, you're going to have that sense of responsibility within your group. Not only to your creator and the panelists, the opposite panelist sense, but also to the group itself, sort of a collective responsibility. I think we typically are pack animals in that this just happens to be the pack that the statistic relies upon. There's a statistic released this week, 84% more likely to be molested by a religious clergyman. At the end of the day, there's lots of statistics that point to different things, but what it really comes down to is how we choose to divide ourselves. And inside of those divisions, we tend to protect in order to be protected. So I think it all flows into one another.
So I think it goes back to the previous question as well. The previous question, which states that you can get religion gives you a moral compass, not necessarily. I think that's what was explained over here. And secondly, fear is a motivator. If you are fearful of divine retribution, and if that helps you in preserving an order in the society, that's great. But that's not where you want to be.
I'd want to look closely. Ooh, sorry. I'd want to look closely at the statistics that you're talking about. It's really tough to control for all the variables here and make an apples to apples comparison. If you look at things like murder rates in first world industrialized countries, where the US is generally acknowledged to be more religious than Northern Europe is, but our murder rates are much higher than Northern European murder rates are. So I think if you are careful to look at an apples to apples comparison, it won't bear up the claim that you are making.
Thank you, Dr. Fisher. My next question is now for the theist panel, and specifically I want to start with Imam Dr. Anjum, but then open it up to the rest of the panelists on the theist side. Because Imam Dr. Anjum, you mentioned the idea of a God of mercy and compassion. And many people believe that religion and the belief in God provides a moral compass for a lot of individuals. But as everyone is well aware of, history is filled with examples of nations and peoples who claim they believe in God doing horrible things in the name of God. The Spanish Inquisition, colonialism, religious wars of the past. And religion can and sometimes is still used to discriminate and harm others, such as minorities or women or people of different orientations. Conversely, history is filled with examples of people who don't believe in God but do wonderful things. Andrew Carnegie was a renowned philanthropist, Pablo Picasso, Van Gogh, even Mark Zuckerberg. So the question for you, Imam Dr. Anjum, and the rest of the panel on the theist side is, can we claim that only religion serves as a moral compass when time and time again we see it used for distorted purposes such as gaining power, money, resources, or to oppress?
So it's a very good, analyzation of the both groups. And I would like to say from the Islamic perspective that those people who have been doing in the history of all those acts of violence and horrible acts, as you said, it is not because of the religion. It is they are abusing the religion. They are misinterpreting the verses from the Holy Scripture. They are putting them out of context, and that's how they are trying to justify their acts of violence and hostility and whatnot. So these are the people who are not on the right path, and they are not following the right understanding of the religion. They are misguided people, misled people, and they are, as I said, abusing the name of the religion to justify their acts of horror. So that's how I would like to say from the Islamic perspective.
Religion at various times have appeared with various groups of people. And now Jesus came at the time approximately of the city-state. Muhammad came to establish a nation. Baha'u'llah has come to establish a world civilization. We believe in world peace and world unity, but you cannot have peace, you cannot have unity unless you have justice. Right now, we are needing a great deal of justice. One of the main teachings of Baha'u'llah is that there is the unity of the human race. This doesn't just mean brotherhood. This doesn't just mean being friendly to your neighbor. It means a true love of the other person, even though that person be your enemy. Baha'u'llah said, as far as religion is concerned, if religion is the cause of war and disagreement, to have religion.
So at this time, we have about 5 minutes left before we conclude for the evening. I'd like to open it up to the panelists to ask any pointed questions of the opposite side. Let's keep it civil. I think we've sort of all agreed to that. But I'd like to open it up. So if any of you have a question you'd like to start off with, you can certainly entertain that.
I'll go ahead. To the distinguished panel. Very recently, Pope Francis said that Islam and Christianity were based on conquest. And he just left it at those two, but I would like to get a response from you on how do you interpret that statement from the Pope?
I'm not quite sure that I heard you completely. If you would restate your question, please.
Very recently, Pope Francis stated that Islam and Christianity were based on conquest. And I wanted to hear from the panel how would they interpret that statement of the Pope?
Well, not to contradict our dear Pope Francis, who is an emissary of love and peace and justice and social awareness, the social gospels of Jesus, really. And so for Christianity, yes, when the early church took up the Roman Empire's model of being, and the behavior of Jesus, who had no conquest and only brought love and care and loved everyone. The tax collectors, the lepers, those that were ill, those that were outcast. And so there was no idea of conquest or being a king or being a grand leader of a nation. He came instead to tell us to love one another. Love your mother and your father. And so I would say yes, while some religions, Christianity, may have been after a conquesting government, the message of Jesus is to love one another as ourselves. And it is done unto you as you believe.
So as we go to the original sources of Islam, that are the verses from the Quran or the prophetic narrations of the Prophet of Islam, so Islam and Christianity, they were not at all about their conquest or from the religious perspective. Whatever we have seen, the militancy in both of the groups, sometimes in the history, it was because of the hunger of the power. Either they were the kings from the Muslim faith, or they were the rulers or the kings from the Christian faith. So it was not because of the faith, and Prophet of Islam, he has clearly mentioned, and he rather commanded or taught Muslim people that there should be no hatred among the people on the basis of the faith. Even we in the Western society, we hear a lot that Muslims, they hate Jews. That is also a very wrong statement, because if we look from the time of the Prophet himself, he was surrounded by many neighbors, and they were the followers of the Jewish faith. And then he drafted a constitution that is known as the Constitution of Medina, that has been considered as the first charter of the human rights in the history of humanity, that was drafted long before the Charter of Human Rights from United Nations. So it was in 7th century. And in that Charter of the Human Rights, known as the Constitution of Medina, the Prophet ensures the equal rights of all the minorities, all the Jews who were living in the town of Medina, and the Christians and the pagans and all the minorities. So this is not because of the teachings of the religion. All this conquest is because of the political reasons and just to take the power. That was it.
Growing in India, I can say that it faced, as an Indian community, it faced the wrath of both religions that you have just mentioned. But having said that, I've grown up in the same apartment complex with a Muslim, with a Christian, with a Jew, with a Persian. I would say that, yes, these persecutions have happened. And if you look into the historic numbers, they've happened in millions. I'm talking of just the Indian subcontinent, and I can vouch from that perspective. But moving forward, as a religion, as a representative of that God who should be representing love, who should be representing peace, as a responsible representative of that God who is representing peace and mercy, I should abhor from the idea of any violence. And when somebody who in the name of religion does something in the name of God as a violence, I should have enough courage to stand up and denounce such person and their act immediately and instantly.
Yes.
So
The atheists?
I do have one question, and I want Dr. Justin Fisher to answer first, and then I'll open it up for the rest of the atheist side. And this will be the last question. Dr. Fisher, you mentioned the idea of logic being a guiding principle for how one views one's place in the world. And the argument for many atheists is that belief in God or a divine creator requires leaps in logic. And it's much more preferable to believe in something that can be measured or explained, like logic and science. But countless times we've developed scientific models to explain existence or the world around us, only to have them disproved by new groundbreaking models. We believe in the models until the next better version comes around. So by believing in science or logic as the sole explanation for the world around us, aren't you making the same sort of logical leap as those who believe in religion as an explanation for it?
So I think we should be humble and admit there are lots of things we don't know. You know, I admitted that maybe someday Quetzalcoatl will fly down from heaven and convince me that he actually did hang with the Aztecs after all. So, you know, I'm open to being shown wrong. And as you mentioned, science has a long track record of having theories be revised in light of new evidence. And I think that's the attitude that we all should have towards all these matters. You know, what's much more disturbing to me is when I encounter religious people who say, no, I've got the one book I need. I don't need any more books. All the answers are right there. You know, that's just not the way the world works. You know, we are ignorant of lots of things. There's lots of stuff we still have to learn, and I think we all need to admit that. And I think I do admit that. Right now, I don't see any evidence that any gods exist. So right now, I don't believe in any gods. If someday good evidence does arise, I might start believing in gods. I think we all should be responsive to evidence in that way.
I think that concludes our debate this evening. Let's give our panelists a round of applause.
All right. So I wouldn't be a very good timekeeper if we continued on. So I'm going to cut it off here because I know there's a ton of questions everyone might have, and we can continue this all night, but I'm hungry, so I'm going to just cut it off here, okay? But yes, yeah, that's what I was going to say. We are serving dinner afterwards. So if the panelists are open to it, people can approach and ask any questions that you might have. So the first thing I wanted to say in conclusion was just, I mean, look around the room. I mean, we are bursting at the seams. I've never seen this hall quite as filled as it is tonight. And it just goes to show the need for these types of interfaith panel discussions. And yeah. I just want to express my sincerest gratitude for all the panelists who've come out. You know, it's a Friday night. You know, there's other things that they had to do, so they could have done tonight, but they were gracious enough to come out here and answer some of the questions that the moderators asked. I was like, I wouldn't want to be on that other side of the table, but they answered them graciously and intellectually and in such a way that you know, that it was just beautifully done. So on that note, we do have some small gifts that we would like to hand out to the panelists. They are some books that they're Chinmay Mission publications that were written by our Puja Gurudev. Another thought that came to mind was, I'm sure everyone has had that experience where you watch a movie and it's just so intellectually stimulating and you're like, you can't help but to ask all your friends, do you see that movie yet? and then you just talk about it, like Inception, like that movie. You never can quite wrap your head around it, or The Matrix. So there's so many great movies like that. That's exactly how I felt tonight. I feel that this conversation will continue well beyond this hall, that I'm sure we're going to continue this conversation through dinner and well beyond that. And I hope to repeat this event in future years, or many years to come, because I've enjoyed it thoroughly, and I'm sure the audience enjoyed it too. Lastly, go ahead. Yeah. Lastly, just for logistics for dinner, as Swami Sarveshanda has highlighted, that it is our customary in our tradition to let our guests go first. So I would ask Chinmay Mission members to please invite our guests to take their dinner first. The dinner is located downstairs. There's staircases on either side of the hall. If you just follow the staircase down and just follow the smell of curry, then you will find the dinner downstairs. So after the gifts are passed out, I would like to invite our panelists to take their dinner first. We have a reception table set for the panelists, and then we have a standing room cocktail table set up in a classroom downstairs. So everyone at this time, I would like to invite you to enjoy your dinner, and thanks again for everyone attending, and thanks again to all our esteemed panelists.
Thank you, Ramesh. And thank you, all the panelists and the moderators. And just before we go down for our upload, just for the atheists, today is Friday, and let's have a good TGIF. Ramesh?